My name's Jonna Kintaka Sawyer, and I'm president of HR Consultants Incorporated. And with me today to talk to you briefly towards the end of the presentation is Brooke Kintakis. And HRC is a management HR consulting and training firm. We provide employers with human capital solutions that improve individual, group, and organizational performance while we minimize your employment practice risk. In business 21 years, we're ISO certified, and we work with employers across the United States. We're a disadvantaged business enterprise similar to a WBE in 49 states. So that's a brief introduction about us, and I'm thrilled to be here because I'm passionate about strategic workforce planning. And as we know, things have changed drastically. And so today, for those of you that know me, Susan's going to get a bit of a repeat because I did this for HRMA of Blair County in May. Yes, so middle of May. So we did add some new things to it, but the strategic workforce plan is the foundation for you to recruit employees in a competitive marketplace. So you'll walk out of here with 2 tools that will help you actually develop a plan when you get back to the office. That's what I'm all about, and there's a lot of familiar faces in the room that have been to facilitations with me, and so that's kind of the way I roll. You know, one of the things that I think is important to open up with is that in April, the economy added 263,000 new jobs, right? And we're at an approximate 3.6 unemployment rate, according to Bureau of Labor Statistics. So what does that mean for all of us? Anybody? What does that mean?
Can't find good people.
Can't find new people, right?
Good people.
Good people, right? Because there's not many people out there, right? And more employees are looking to jump ship from one organization to the next. So we need to have a plan in place. Now, the aim of strategic workforce planning is to really reduce your vulnerability, to make sure you've got the capacity, the competencies, and the flexibility to move from where you are today to some future state. Now, how many of you in here are over 100 employees? Okay. How many are fewer than 100 employees? Fewer than 50? 25? Okay. The cool thing about today and about this plan, this is not a large or mid-market employer's problem only. It's also small employers, which according to the Small Business Administration is fewer than 500 employees, and or there's various definitions of even what a micro business is, and that could be those of us that have fewer than 10 employees. Okay, so this is all relevant, and I want you to keep it simple, and we're going to talk about the importance of having the right people at the right place, with the right skills, at the right time, at the right price. And why that's important is that we need, with this talent mobility, the low unemployment rates, with the baby boomers retiring, with just all the different things that are happening in the marketplace, we need to look at current state and future state. And I'm going to help you do that in real quick. Okay. Also, when I mention right price, I just want to make sure that I emphasize the importance of not having a competitive rewards package, and yet we don't want to overpay or underpay, right? Because if we're doing either one of those, we're potentially doing ourselves a big disservice. So it's critically important that you know what the market rates are for those positions that are critical to your success. And it doesn't matter if you're, over 100, but those smaller companies, if you lose one critical person or 2 critical people and you don't have a backup plan, what could that do to your business?
Cripple it. Yeah.
Cripple it. Yes. So we'll talk briefly about that as well. The first handout that I want you to take out is that the workforce planning and development, and we're going to talk about the supply and demand analysis first. And if you look at the bullets on the supply and demand analysis, this is what I like about kind of the keep it simple principle, and then you'll go through and just take and go through a checklist. But the supply analysis is, where are you now? And what do you have relative to your internal bench strength? So do we have the right people mix? You know, I said right people, right time, right skills, right place, right price. That are going to meet our short-term and long-term business goals? Do we have that talent in place? What are the gaps? And are we looking to external resources to bring people in? Or can we look at the local recruitment area and or outside the area? Do we have the skill sets here locally, or do you have to market again for your positions outside? And or are you looking at training and developing your internal people? Can you do that as far as the supply part of this? Now, that once you answer those questions on the supply, that's going to inform your demand analysis and going to give you your skill gap. And the thing that I ask you to think about, and you know, I think even Jeff talked about those of us that have been in business for 20 years or 2 years or 25 years, are we looking to grow? Are we retrenching? So do we need to look at different service or product lines so that we can move from the decline phase back up to an expansion mode? And is that going to look a lot different as far as the people that you need to recruit? So the supply, and then looking at the demand, are we retrenching, growing, how fast, and what areas? If we're moving in a new complete direction, maybe through the use of new technologies, again, do you have those skill sets internally? Do we need to redefine job descriptions? And you know, sometimes job descriptions are the most made fun of thing that we've seen in an HR and in a business arena. Well, we don't need job descriptions because it says, you know, that this is my job description, and people will say things like, it's not in my job description. But if we don't have the essential functions documented, and Brooke will talk about this at the very end relative to, we're not a staffing company, but our retainer clients have us do recruitment campaigns for them. So she gets to see firsthand some of the shortcomings and why they're not sourcing the candidates that they need. So she'll talk about that a little bit. And then the budget analysis is just, what do you have fund-wise to support your demand analysis for talent? You have to set aside a budget, right? If you're going to hire more people because you're growing, or you're changing, or you're hiring new positions that are IT positions, healthcare, you know, the skill shortages will end up with that. And then finally, the strategic analysis is really important too, because I want you to think about how many of you are constantly putting maybe blind ads out there in the local market or maybe in other markets in which you are going to expand to see what the labor force looks like as far as talent. How many of you do that all the time? Okay. How many of you are more reactive, and when you have an opening, you do a recruitment campaign? Okay. Guess what? I'm going to encourage you to do. Okay. And when you do your checklist, I want you to think about, what did you say if you lose a critical employee and you're a smaller business? It could cripple and or potentially close your company. Or a competitor could maybe acquire you or put you out of business. So I just want you to think strategically in that regard, because that's really what this is talking about. So you don't want to wait. You'd want to see about a continuous pipeline of talent. We work for, again, a diverse section of, a cross-section of business and industries, from manufacturing to healthcare, to financial services, to energy, to behavioral health, nonprofit, government, and they can't get good people. And so that's our reality, and that's why they're having me talk to you about this today, obviously. So again, what level of applicants are you? This is an important question down at the bottom. Is it best to hire people at full performance level, or should you seek entry-level candidates and train and develop them? And that's another decision that you'll have to make. So we have a new employee that started, it's a month and a week now, and she said that she really never experienced her first week of employment where she was able to actually perform work and contribute and feel valued by our team in her first week of work. And that's our mindset strategically that we need to think about when we bring new people on. They need to be ready to work their first day, even if we're putting them through a training development program, because they're going to be taking things away from that are critically important to contribute, to feel part of the team, and to really be respected and valued by their team members. So this is something that, again, I want you to go through when you go back. Look this through. The checklist, on the other hand, I'd like you all have a little, everybody have a pen? There's only 5 areas here, and Sue, this only took us, 5 minutes, I'd say. So under 1 is vision, 2, what are your current resources, 3, needed, 4, drives your action plan, and number 5 is what are the cost implications. Similar to what I just discussed with you, I'd like you to put a little X by all the things that you've already done. And you don't have to do all of these. However, if you have not even addressed some of these things, don't put an X there, because that may be part of your strategic workforce plan when you go back. So just take 5 minutes, and it won't even take that. Check what you're doing or what you've done, and leave it blank of things that you need to do. And it's front and back. I'm looking at my watch in my left hand, by the way, which is a little uncomfortable right now. All right, looks like everybody's done. So we'll go ahead and keep moving on. One of the first places to really start with all of this is with your line managers. So if you talk to your line managers, as long as you feel you've got good supervisors and or frontline managers in place, and they've been trained thoroughly in many different areas, especially on the interpersonal skill side of how to engage employees, how to provide performance expectations, how to manage to those expectations, provide coaching and ongoing feedback throughout the year based on expectations. They'll know if your employees are optimally utilizing their time effectively, if they have the right skills that they need to be able to perform the jobs, or if you've got marginal performers, they're going to know that. They should know if productivity levels are increasing or if product levels are decreasing. Are we optimizing their skills to do the job? Do we have the current staff to achieve the desired outputs that are required of the company, or maybe a business unit, or for you larger folks, a division, right? So think about that. And are our jobs actually designed effectively? Going back to how we opened this morning. So this is really important, because once you have that discussion with your line managers or frontline supervisors, or if you're small, if you're introspective as an owner, right? You're going to have some intuition and some direct observations as to who has what it takes to get the job done, and or what resources you will need to provide them to bring them from a marginal level of performance up to a successful average and or good level of performance. So this is really important to think about as you gather information related to both of those handouts that I provided to you. Now here's something that I think, Susan, I don't know if you'll agree, this was a real aha moment for everybody. In the last, we had about 50 people, I think, in our session here in Altoona for the HR Association. But one of the things that just is shocking to me, and we had an employer there with 19,000 employees, and they don't do this, nor did they have this checklist filled out, nor did they have the formalization of the strategic workforce plan in place to the extent that they needed. So that affirmation really stood out for me. A lot of the manufacturing companies that we work for, whether they're small or mid-market, they measure labor productivity by, labor cost and output, which is great. It's wonderful. But does that measure labor productivity of your entire company? No. What about all the support functions? So, how many of you are measuring labor productivity by looking at revenue divided by number of employees to come up with annual labor productivity? Outstanding. And what do you do with that?
We have KPIs every morning.
Okay.
Once we have executive meetings where we discuss all the
Okay.
numbers, all the figures.
Well, congratulations, because you're the exception, rather than the norm. And that's okay for all of us. But, we look at that and measure this so that I know when I need to hire another consultant. So just like Jeff said, put away your phones, we're going to do some math. So if you have a phone with you, I'd like you to take your calculator out on your cell phone. Because I challenge you to go back, and labor productivity that we're going to work on now is the foundation of a human resource hiring forecast, right? And again, I'm not getting academic on you. These figures are really kind of fictitious and low. I mean, that labor productivity, none of us would be in business, but I just did it for the sake of not having too many numbers in your phone. So this labor productivity, revenue divided by headcount, you can see that in year one, we were at 11,120 when we took 3.613 million divided by 325 employees, right? Then we gained a little bit of revenue in year two. Labor productivity stayed the same, even though our head count went up a little bit. Then revenue went up in year three, and our head count went down a little bit. So maybe we implemented a training program or a piece of technology, God bless you, and divided by that head count, labor productivity went up to 12,520. We sustained that through year six. So now I'd like to take you at year seven. And I'd like you to assume that we're going to hit $5 million in revenue this year. Okay? And we're going to keep labor productivity at 12,250. So if you take 5 million divided by 12,520, sorry, how many employees do you get? 399. So the manager, the owner, the HR, the recruiters, you've got to hire 44 new people. You have to hire 44 new people, assuming no turnover. Are you with me? Okay. So in that same year, let's take a look and see that we implemented some new software. We provided a new training program. We updated some equipment and captured some new efficiencies. So with that 5 million, we think we're going to go up to $13,000 in labor productivity. So take the 5 million divided by 13,000 in labor productivity and let me know what number you come up with. 385, 384, depending on the rounding. So instead of needing to hire 44 people, we only need to hire 29. That's why this is important. You start to think about not only in production and or direct services, but what's our overall overhead with admin costs included in that. Again, this is a foundation for an HR forecast. It's something that they're talking about every day, or what a KPI looks like relative to labor productivity. Really important. Okay? Any questions on that? Does this make sense? And it's so simple, and the majority of companies in the United States are not using this metric. Yes?
We started using this about 10 years ago when our accountant said our labor costs were too high.
Yep.
And for our particular industry, the 100,000 per employee revenue number kind of threshold, he was always concerned because we were way above that. between the efficiencies we gain by studying processes and then looking at these numbers, we now do what we did 10 years ago with half the number of people between efficiencies. And so
Amen.
it is a really important key number.
Give her a round. That's exactly what we want you to do with this. Lean out your work processes. You know, that is a great example of the power of this simple exercise. And it doesn't matter how small we are. My firm has fewer than 10 employees, even though we have 8 to 10 vetted ISO subcontractors based upon the size of our contracts. So again, this little thing, please go back and do it, okay? It's fun, and it's fun too. Now, where it gets a little, maybe not complicated, but you know, you want to make sure also, is everybody measuring turnover? Anybody not measuring turnover officially?
Not officially.
Okay. Okay. It's something that, you know, we really want to start thinking about. You know, we measure it monthly and then it's an annualized number, right? And you want to really see where that turnover is occurring. Is it in those high demand positions in healthcare, IT, manufacturing, the skilled trades, where, you know, what do the people look like? What divisions, departments, et cetera, are we losing people? And these are the normal reasons why we lose people, right? You know, we have a lot of retirements, whether it's the traditionalists and the baby boomers, dismissals, disability, death, resignation, layoff, and leave of absence. Just those are some of the reasons why, you know, we see this mobility in addition to the economy that we talked about as we opened. So it's really important that you measure turnover because you want to keep your high quality performers and especially your top performers. And I looked at the Human Capital Institute, and they call a star performer, a high performer, produces 3 times as much as your average employee. And a superstar or a top performing producer produces 12 times more than your average employees. So talk about the example of the labor productivity, simple little exercise. You retaining those employees is critically important to surviving in today's competitive marketplace and attracting and retaining those types of individuals. And again, it doesn't matter if you're small or large. Here's where, you know, you really have to just pay attention to the inflow of people relative to all the reasons I talked about turnover. You want to also think about, we have a group home client that serves developmentally disabled individuals, and it's a very, very, very difficult job. They're in 2 states, but they probably have 50 some group homes, and they study turnover yield. They have such a high turnover, almost like the hospitality industry, because it's such a difficult job. So they're training these individuals, these residential program workers, for 40 hours, right? Guess where they're going after their 40 hours are up? Where'd they? They quit. Guess where they're going?
Who knows where, but
Sheets, you know, because of the wage and them knowing the level of difficulty of work that they've signed on for. Even though they're doing realistic job previews, we've recommended that they show these individuals the consumers that they'll be working with, and they either go to like a Sheets that pays a comparable rate of pay, that the work is different, but they feel that it's easier and it might not be as meaningful. So the people that stay are those people that are mission driven, that are compassionate, and they love the difference that they're making in the lives of other people, all for good. So, or they go to a competitor because they think the grass is greener on the other side, and it's not greener on the other side. I can't tell you the perks, the bonuses, the celebrations, the successes, the great things that this company does for their employees because they can, because they're so successful at what they do.
Joanna, I sit on the board of a not-for-profit, and, one of the things we talked about at our last board meeting, and we've talked about internally, is a lot of these positions pay at a rate that people qualify for public assistance.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, as an employer, morally and ethically pay someone for a 40-hour work week and then turn around and pay them at a rate that they have to rely on that? And I think that's one of the challenges that we as employers have, is we need to get people to a living wage,
Yep.
but yet we have to be competitive, and then you put on top of that the issue of the not-for-profits, and that's where I can't juggle all of these things in my mind, in my for-profit world and in my nonprofit volunteer work. And
Right.
I don't know what the answer is, but that really hit me when I
Yep.
realized what the poverty level is in this community and
Yep.
how many people they're paying less than that.
Yep. And you're spot on, and I think it depends, on the size of the nonprofit, because I'm on 2 boards for this in a similar situation, and we're allowed to retain so much only, right? So in a discretionary way, we've been providing those employees with bonuses not attached to base pay, in addition to their annual increase that's bumping them up, but we're paying attention every 2 years to see if we can bump up that hourly rate of pay as well, to the extent we can afford. Looking for different grants and diversification of services so that we might have some more wiggle room and be able to allocate administrative costs across a couple different programs. And it still is an issue, but that's the way we're trying to handle that. That's a valid point.
That's a great tip.
Yeah.
That's a great tip.
Well, thanks. Thank you. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Are we good so far? Everybody's awake. That's good. That's very good. And so the flow analysis you want to keep mindful of too, because here's where those different areas I told you that people turn over, here's where they're coming in, here's where we're at now, and here's where we're exiting. Here's the output. So you can see we have more people leaving than we have coming in, right? So we have to look at your existing staff, look at the job design, work processes, leaning out those KPIs. Can we, what's the career progression of our existing staff? So if we know we have a manager promoting out or promoting to another position through our succession plan or successor pool, are they ready now? Are they ready 12 months from now? Are they ready 2 years from now? So what are we going to do in the interim, right? Or are we going to kind of stay off that promotion for that particular position? So always pay attention to the training development needs, the succession plan, and your promotion tracks there, because you're going to need to be able to, you're going to need to backfill that successor that's also moving, that's highly skilled, obviously, because she or he is a high performer, right? And you want to keep them because of the promotion. So it's very important that you keep in mind, and again, it doesn't matter how small we are as a company. These numbers can be a lot lower, but we need to be mindful and always keep the pipeline full, right? Okay? So finally, we move into this horrific topic of skill shortage, which is a national, regional, local, global issue, right? So how many of you believe that you're in an industry that you're suffering from skill shortage? Okay, not quite half of you, but almost half of you. And what is causing the skill shortage? Anybody? What's causing the skill shortage?
People aren't training people for the jobs that are available,
Okay, so the lack of training for the people.
whether it be schools or whoever.
Okay.
Schools train people to go to college. They don't train people for
Right.
in a lot of cases.
Okay. So he's saying, hey, people are going to college, but that's not necessarily what the labor market needs. Okay. Who else? Skill shortage. Angie.
My positions are in
Mhm.
IT, but they require 5 to 10 years of experience before I can even put them customer client facing.
Okay.
So that just kind of adds the double whammy.
Okay, so IT and that 5 years of experience, which is critically important relative to them being even eligible to come in to touch point and engage with the customer. Yeah, excellent. What else? We have any healthcare in the room? No healthcare?
The
Yes.
other point about college is only about 25% of people today are working within their field of study. So 75% of the people who have degrees in X field are not working in that field.
Okay.
And that tells me that we're putting far too much emphasis on college education just for the sake of the paper and not focusing on skills and the kind of things we really need.
Okay.
Plus, these kids are coming up with enormous debt, and there are much better ways to train people without making them for that debt.
Okay. Outstanding point. Did everybody hear that? 25% of college graduates are actually working in their field of study. They couldn't hear you in the back, sorry. And 75% are in other jobs unrelated to their bachelor's degree and or their master's degree, which is very sad because we're not doing our jobs. And you know, we see a lot of STEM shortages. We see a lot of skilled craft trade shortages, and we see a lot of healthcare shortages for our clients. So again, those are the areas primarily that we're having to get really creative to pull these people in these respective areas. So what can we do to mitigate this impact? What are some of the things you're doing? And just that's a quick shout out. We have a little bit of time because we started so late, even though they're opening the doors on us. And we're not done. Yes?
We do in-house training.
Okay, outstanding. In-house training? What else?
In-house apprenticeships or external apprenticeships?
Okay, in-house or external apprenticeships? Yes. Internships, excellent. Angie?
I'm looking at people that are the boomer age that maybe want to move back to the area for a different lifestyle, a slower pace of life.
Okay.
Have that experience and they're ready to come home.
And that's great because Jeff's talking about the generations and how valuable the boomers are that have that knowledge and have those credentials or certifications that you need forensically to come back in and work for your company. Yep, great, yes.
Actually, I just had a meeting yesterday with someone from the PA Career Link
Right,
that they're doing, they have some grant money that they're working with on-the-job program. That there's an on-the-job training program, but also there's a new program that's a 12-week adult transition program for people that have taken time.
I just got that 28-hour person yesterday.
We're looking forward, we're looking into it and looking forward to it. I think a lot of people may not know that those programs and those money are out there, and that actually is free to us, that it's a program fully funded by that grant money.
Yes.
Or you want
For
to find
those
out, they
people
can
that-
come see me because I work with them too.
Yes, because Jara came and met with me with CareerLink, with Goodwill. Yep. So get in touch because that's really a great opportunity. You either can do a 40-hour with half pay at $14.27 an hour, or they'll pay the full ride if they work at 12 bucks an hour, I think 28 hours a week for 12 weeks. The other one's 960 hours. So look into that. That's really important. And, you know, the HCM also talked about these couple of areas, and they're telling you to rethink your recruiting practices. You know, instead of hiring for the right skills, are we going to grow talent? And you mentioned some of that. Outsourcing, using temp workers, temp to hires, partnerships with colleges and universities, apprenticeships, are you working the career fairs? Are you looking into these grant opportunities? Tuition assistance programs, and you know, the temp to hire is a nice opportunity too, because they get to know you, you get to know them, and that sometimes turns out to be a win-win, not always. And then a recent study too released that oftentimes in this age of talent mobility, employees don't leave just because of money. They don't leave the company, they leave their manager. So I ask you to please focus on the training of your supervisors, whether it's transition to supervision, management training, or leadership training, in order to really truly have an engaged workforce that's really willing to maximize effort on behalf of your company, even psychologically own your company, as Jeff indicated in his opening. And Brooke wants to talk just 2 or 3 minutes about some really important tips for your recruitment campaigns.
Hello everyone, my name is Brooke. I'm a consultant with HRC. Just very quickly, because I know we're short on time, I just wanted to talk about a couple of things that you can be doing with your job ads. How many people here are post on Indeed? And post on Indeed? How many like Indeed?
So.
Okay. I always like to start our clients off with Indeed because it's free. They don't have to pay for it. I always tell them we can address their issues. Maybe look at something paid, but for starters, let's start out with that and see where we can go from there. Things that I told them that are important, a lot of mistakes that I see happen are that they give it general descriptions and folks don't even mention what the qualifications are. Your entire job description should be in your job ad. The people who are applying to your job, they need to know what the physical and mental demands are so that you can address any ADA concerns. So just having have an overview of it, the minimum qualifications right underneath, and then again the full job description for them to review. And then also, please be sharing your advertisements, whether you post them on Indeed, share them to your social media page, and make sure that they're up on your website so that when someone sees your website, they know what career opportunities you have available. And other than that, that is all I have to say. Thank you.